at 6:30 Thursday, November 21st. I will call the meeting to order, and I would ask for the following, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
There's a motion by Jim,
I'll second.
and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to approving the minutes from October 17th, 2019. May I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion.
Motion by
Krista.
Krista. Sorry, Krista. I apologize. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to public hearing on land use fees, public land dedication ordinance. We will now open the public hearing. Those wishing to address the Planning Commission should come forward, state their name and address for the record. After all comments are received, the public hearing will be closed. No further comments on this issue will be received at this meeting. Okay, Erin, you want to take us away?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Tonight we are reviewing the Parks Master Plan, which was included in your packet, but it gets a little bit tricky. I'm going to ask you to stay at 30,000 feet, and I'll talk you through that. So the Parks Master Plan is worked on by the Parks Commission. They spent most of 2019 working on it. They give a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council adopts the plan. So it's a supplement to the 2040 Design Carver Plan. If you'll remember when we were reviewing that document, the Parks and Trails section was pretty short, knowing that we were going to make this a pretty robust plan. So these two things work together. So thinking about that, this is where the Planning Commission comes in. So you don't review the merits of the plan. I'll talk you through some of the pretty pictures, though, because they're fun. And if you want to give the Parks Commission any kudos during this meeting, that would be welcomed. But the thing that you are reviewing tonight is the park dedication fee. So since it's a land use fee, the Planning Commission is responsible for holding the public hearing. And then the public land dedication ordinance is also a land use decision. So those two are what you're reviewing tonight, but I'll give you some park stuff too because it's fun. So consideration for adoption of the entire plan will be before the City Council on the 16th. So at that meeting, they will consider the Parks Master Plan, the ordinance, and then the fee schedule, which will update the fee that we're going to talk about tonight. So a little bit of background on this too. The Parks Master Plan is a guiding document. So the things you see in it could happen at some point. We don't know when. Between now and 2040, we anticipate the Parks Commission to start tackling some of the work. So I encourage you to get excited about some of these things, but don't expect them all to happen in the next year probably. So we'll talk through some of the things that the Parks Commission spent so much time on. So there are a couple search areas that were set by Design Carver, the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and then we dove deeper into them. So we started to think about what these parks would look like. So the first is downtown. This is right next to the church where we used to meet as a planning commission, and it's where the public utilities building is. So if you think about the white cinder block building that the city owns, this plan contemplates demolishing that building and using it for a public park. So this park includes a splash pad with bathrooms, which is the building. There's a small performance space in the levee, so no additional infrastructure, but potentially some space that we could use. The parking opens up really nicely. That could be used for like a farmer's market or a food truck fest. And then something that's really cool about the splash pad is that the Parks Commission was really cognizant that it's in our downtown. So they wanted to add some historical elements to it. So I'm going to try to flip to the next slide, but maybe struggle. Oh, there. You see how spazzy I was? So many clicks. So in the splash pad, there are several nods to Carver's, the HPC, and the history of Carver. So the big feature in the center is the water tower. So if you think about a splash pad, that would operate as like a tipping point where water would come out of it. So the historic water tower. Number 2 would be similar to the old trestle bridge. So some construction of that for a pathway. 3, the 2 kind of wading ponds, they wouldn't be terribly deep, but kids would be welcome to play in them, and they would mirror the Carver Rapids. And then, of course, keeping the historic tugboat is number 4. 5, there's been some back and forth about changing the building, making sure that it looks historic. We started out with a pretty modern structure there, which was beautiful and lovely, but that was a comment that was received that this should fit what the rest of the downtown looks like. So that is the first park, so downtown. Park number 2 sits at the intersection of Jonathan Carver Parkway and County Road 40. So right now it's being used as a public services storage location. So if you drive past, there's a fenced area and then just some piles of like wood chips and some class 5 there. This park contemplates a brush site, so something that we've identified that the community likely needs since there aren't many options around. A dog park, both for large and small dogs, which I think people will be excited about, and then a Frisbee golf course. So 3 things that we think can program into one space. So this is number 2. And then the third is a big sports complex south of town. So this area is currently in the orderly annexation agreement we have with Dahlgren Township. We don't anticipate that we'll be there for several years, but at this point, should we choose to acquire the property, we can get a better deal on it. Land becomes really expensive once it's directly adjacent to the city, so some steps will likely be taken in the next few years to acquire property south of town and then start landscaping. So to buy property and develop a park at the same time is great, but it brings you trees that are tiny. So if we start to make some of these forward-looking decisions early, we can get down there and have a pretty robust system of landscaping that creates more of a park setting. So this area contemplates several different ball fields. It also contemplates potentially moving all ball fields from Community Park to the park south of town. So one central location. And then the Parks Commission has spent some time thinking about Community Park a bit differently. What does it look like if fields aren't there? So if you dug into the Parks Master Plan at all, there are plans in there to allow for community gardens and then offer a potential farmers market space and an amphitheater. So making Community Park less of a sports complex and more of a community gathering space. So that is park number 3. Those are the beautiful pictures that the Parks Commission worked on. So I know that's the fun part, and if you have comment, feel free. But again, you're not reviewing the merits of this plan. So if you hate the dog park idea, you're a little bit late on that one. You should have come to a Parks Commission meeting.
I would just like to say that I'm incredibly impressed. Oops, sorry, I didn't turn myself on. When I saw this, which wasn't recently, I was just like, man, they did some really great work on the Parks Commission, and I'm just thrilled.
Good.
I'd have to agree. I think it looks great.
At one time downtown, we were talking about taking out the levee there and putting in flood walls.
Yes. So as we've
So you-
explored the levee project, the location where it was in that first plan is no longer feasible to have a flood wall there. So yes, that was a really cool idea, but unfortunately, with what we know now, we know that's not an option.
So I realize this is going out to 2040, but I think it incorporates pretty much everything you would want in a park, and especially looking at the size of Carver now and where it's going to. I think it's good to incorporate those things that a lot of other cities don't have.
Great. Thanks for that feedback. I'll pass it on to the group.
The other thing that I would add, park number 2, I'm not sure, it's not clear how far that carries down, but I would think we could carry it all the way down to Carver Bluffs Parkway.
Yes, so there's property adjacent to this that's owned by the HOA, the Carver Bluffs HOA. So we're interested in talking to them just to see if it's an option. There could be potential for expanding the Frisbee golf course then 2 to 18 holes instead of just the 9. So it's something that we're thinking about. I got some feedback on this plan that I'll talk about a little bit that Bolton and Mink is working on revising a bit. We know that there's not a trail connection here and it's a tricky location. So one of the revisions is that the trail that you see here is going to meander through the entire site. And then should we choose to move forward with the Carver Bluffs HOA piece, we could connect to Bluff Park and then into our greater trail system. Some other feedback is that the dog park is really important and people are excited about it. So we asked Bolton and Mink to take out the looped parking to give us larger dog park spaces. So this probably will not be the final version that goes to the City Council for final review. We're still making a couple of tweaks on the drawings.
In regard to all the trails, Like,
Yes.
is the trail overlay in all of these parks? You know, because it looks like, I just remember seeing all the trails that we had, and it looked very walkable.
So downtown is pretty connected with what we have. Otherwise, as part of the Parks Master Plan, there is some connectivity that we have to identify some areas that we need to address. So,
So it's all incorporated in
yeah,
here?
yep.
Okay.
So aside from these beautiful parks, the Parks Master Plan does dive into identifying those spots. And then there's some information about funding for it, just because park dedication dollars usually can't be used for those just segments that we need to fill.
Of the trails?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then back on this is park number 1, right?
Yeah.
Okay, in regard to the levy,
Yep.
and just all the different discussions that we're talking about with levy, is there any kind of impact with this as well?
Sure. So this area, the levee may change a little bit with some of like the sloping that's needed and the space that's needed on the top that's flat. I anticipate that this plan, we haven't done a straight review with the WSB work on the levee to the Bolton and Mank work, but we wouldn't do anything that would compromise either the park location or the levee. So we'll likely pull it back from the levee a bit just so there's space should they need it. Something else that's really cool about this one is that
Okay,
they're,
that's a great view of it.
yeah.
Okay.
This is a lookout space, so we likely would put a couple kiosks up there, talk about the history of the river, the history of Carver. Something that we've gotten a lot of feedback on from the Carver Business Alliance is that people are on the trail and they don't realize what downtown Carver has. So we could potentially get like a business listing here too that could say food, drink, coffee, ice cream here. So it's been a really interesting process to bring ideas from the HBC, the Carver Business Alliance, Parks Commission, City Council, and Planning all together in this plan, just because it affects all of us, but I think also gets everybody excited
Yeah,
behind
it's a really
something too.
integrative approach.
Yeah,
It's so nice for that part of town to have something so nice in it. You know, what a great idea to build something like this, because you can't build buildings there.
right.
So,
And then another idea that we had at the Parks Commission level is to add some lighting in here. So yes, it's a great park during the day, so kids have a lot of fun there. But at night in the summer, it could transform a little bit to a gathering space where it's also a little bit of a public art installation. So people could grab takeout from Harvey's or Lisa's and sit at a picnic table in a lit area. That's just also really pretty to look at.
yeah.
Well, plus that this increases your safety,
Right.
public safety factor.
Yes,
as well.
absolutely. All right, you ready to get into the nitty gritty of it all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, thinking about the park dedication fee, this plan lays it out what we'll be collecting for each building permit that comes in. So, as part of this plan, you probably saw some jarring dollar amounts, but what we did is we took every park that's anticipated by 2040, gave an estimate of what it would cost today, and added it up to get the final total, which is roughly $18.7 million. So we take that number and then we look at our comp plan to determine what type of development we're anticipating to see. So we broke it down in 2 areas that we collect park dedication dollars. It's either residential or a commercial and industrial mix. So for the future of Carver, it's anticipated in our 2040 growth area, 85% of it will be some type of residential. So that's low density, medium density, high density, and 80% of the mixed use category. For commercial industrial, it's 20% of mixed use, the commercial district, commercial industrial, and obviously the industrial, and that makes up 15% of our growth area. So keep those 2 numbers in your head, 85% and 15%. So we take those numbers with that big dollar amount, the $18.7 million, to reach the park dedication fee. So for residential, 18.7 times 0.85, or the 85% of residential numbers we'll see, divided by 3,912, which is the number of residential units we're expecting, and we get the total of $4,070 per unit. So this fee is collected every time a building permit comes in, so we anticipate with the new development, we can usually get a good ballpark of the amount of money we're going to have in park dedication, which is super helpful. And this money funds new parks only. So we can't use the dollars collected on a residential building permit for things like maintenance. So if a park building needs to be painted, we cannot use these dollars. This is new park only. So the current fee that we're using right now was originally drafted in 2009, and that was, the fee we're collecting is $3,920 per unit. So the change from 2019 to 2020 would be $150 per unit.
Change from 2019 or 2009.
2009.
Yeah, well, the 2019 fee schedule
Well,
has
yeah,
the
this is
3,000.
right.
Yeah, yep,
But it hasn't been increased since 2000.
correct, yes.
In a decade.
So commercial is similar. So think about that $18.7 million times 15, and then commercial and industrial is based on an acreage. So we anticipate in the 2040 comp plan that 927 acres will be used for commercial and industrial. So the current fee is $3,224. The proposed fee is $3,030. So that's a little bit different, that it's going down $194. But I will tell you that our orderly annexation area and then the area we thought about in our 2040 comp plan grew. So the area that we used for our 2030 comp plan that set the 2009 fee was more concentrated, so there was more commercial development set in that smaller area. Since we've gotten larger, it's more residential, a little less commercial. So I would argue it's probably about the same, but the area got bigger. Does that make sense? It's kind of tough to wrap your head around that part.
Makes sense to me.
Okay. You
I
good,
think
John?
it's kind of-
Aaron's looking at me because I'm like, "It's per acre though, so no, I don't get it. But I think I do.
Okay.
Well, you know what I
We
do
grew-
get is,
yes,
I looked at, for instance, Chaska's
Oh,
land dedication
I
fee.
had those notes. I was hoping that'd be a question.
Oh, sorry. I thought of the question
That's
and
okay.
answered it for
All right.
myself. And that's less than a third of what Chaska's
You could
is.
form it in a question.
Yeah, please ask me. What is
Alex?
Chaska?
Help me. Yeah.
For the record, Chaska's commercial fee is $11,128 per acre.
Yeah. So I mean, that, in some ways, you know, you always want to stay close to or below what your neighboring communities are at for
Right.
park dedication, because developers, I mean, that means something to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and to have our commercial industrial park dedication fee be that much less, and we have so much property that could be developed, it might make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What about the residential?
So Chaska's residential is $4,272. So we're in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
And then it gets a little bit tricky. Park dedication is done really differently in different cities. So places like Jordan and Belle Plaine, the only thing they do is they take 10% of the fair market value of the land, which is tricky because who sets that value? I've worked in other communities who have used that, and it's a negotiation at that point to say this acre of land is worth X number of dollars. So this sets a really clear formula.
Otherwise, it's a moving target.
Right, exactly. So I've looked at several.
Yeah, Cologne's like that too.
Yeah,
So it's a little hard to compare it.
right. And it's difficult with a developer to say a property that's mostly wetlands is worth prime farm development land. So it's a negotiation, which is hard.
Right. I just have a question about the length of time between the change in the park dedication fee. Is that typical that we go a decade? Is it on the cycle with our comp plan revisions always?
Yes, the
Because I was just-
overhaul is.
I just wanted to know, like, if for some reason in 5 years, we all of a sudden see that we're having a lot more commercial industrial, would we adjust this formula, you know, from 15%, let's say it goes to 20%?
Yep.
Okay,
So I have built into the Parks Master Plan that the first review is 2023.
okay.
So I think it's something that needs to be revisited, even if it's looking at these fees, just because 2019 dollars might mean something really different than 2023, not knowing what those 4 years could hold. So in the updated plan, I have some set metrics of when it needs to be reviewed.
Great.
So again, commercial that comes in can only be used for new parks. So the money for residential and commercial would largely fund the 3 parks that I was talking about, since they're new uses of land.
So just for clarification, you said commercial. Is it both residential and commercial? Is dedicated to new parks?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Can I ask one more thing?
Yes.
While we're right here. I understand that we can't use park dedication fees to maintain current parks, but when we think about building a brand-new baseball park down here and changing community park to a totally different, can we use park dedication fees for that?
If it's in the park plan in a different use, yes.
Okay, all right.
So that's another thing. The Parks Master Plan can be amended. We just need to go through the process of it. But should an opportunity like that arise, that would be something we would look at with both.
Great.
So the final way that parks are funded in the city of Carver is that there's a city contribution every year. So this money comes from the city's general fund and does go for some of the maintenance stuff. So if a park needs new gravel, if the parking lot needs some upgrades, those things, it comes out of the general fund. So the current collection of 2019 and all years previous was $16,981. The proposed change is $17,516, or an increase of $625 per year. So the methodology we used to determine this fee is we took the percentage change of the residential units. So the residential fee is going up by 3.7%. So we applied that same logic to the city's contribution.
I thought the residential went up about 3.8%. I was going to suggest making it 650.
Okay, that could be. We'll see if Brent can squeeze 25 more bucks out of the budget. I'll check my rounding. So that's the methodology behind it. We chose to apply the same to residential and the city fee just to keep it uniform, keep it easy on developers to say yours bumped up 3.75%, and that the cities did as well.
Sounds good.
So the Planning Commission review, in the packet, there was an updated land use ordinance that goes in line with this plan. So the one that was previously part of our code was for the 2009 plan. So the language was a little bit different, and then obviously the dedication amount was really different. It was like 16.5 million. It's bumping up a little bit. So the two things you're reviewing tonight are that proposed ordinance and then the park dedication fee. It does require a public hearing since it's a change in land use, which has already been opened. But I will open it up for discussion now.
Anybody from the public like to speak? Okay.
I have one question, just for clarification. On page, what is it, 37 of the packet or of the proposal, it's page 43 of the packet. Under the gazebo park, tables with cement, $65,000. And then there says quantity 1.
I would say it's probably
One table,
No, the cement quantity.
cement quantity.
So there would likely be like one cement area with some tables on it,
Okay,
but I can change them.
that was my only, that's like one concrete table, 65,000. That was my only question.
It's sturdy.
Yeah,
With gemstones.
Seats 50.
right. Oh, that could be. That'd
Yeah.
be kind of cool.
I have a general question.
Sure.
So each of the plans has landscaping included. And this kind of, I guess, kind of relates to parks, kind of doesn't. But when commercial industrial submits, they have a landscape plan.
They do.
And let's say that they can't put 50 trees on their lot because they'd be like stacked next to each other. Do you ever say, well, you can't, it won't fit on your property because of your building size and that meets other requirements? Do they give them to the park or you just say you're okay?
Nope, they can do a donation,
Okay.
and then the city can choose to plant them in a different location. But that does happen if, like a commercial user, if you think about some of the lot lines that they use, they're really different than residential. So if they used a 0 lot line on the front of their property and it was small and tight, there could be not a ton of potential. Also, we take a close look at landscaping plans. If there's like large bushes that we think are going to be added, we'll sometimes equate that to a tree just because it's landscaping, but it's not necessarily a tree that's included.
Anybody else have questions, comments, concerns?
Are there any other fees that we don't review annually besides this? Are there a lot of other fees?
So last year was technically my first fee schedule with the city of Carver, and we did some pretty significant changes. We upped several of them just because the planning pass-through of the planner's time stopped since I'm the full-time employee now. So we increased some of the fees to cover a little bit more of my time since it's not a pass-through anymore. So last year we did some pretty significant changes.
But as far as like this fee that you're changing, that you're looking at doing every 3 years now, there's nothing else really out there that isn't reviewed
No.
more regularly than a decade, right?
Right, yes. So the fee schedule, it's adopted every year. So every year we sit down as a group and walk through it just to say, is this hitting what we're looking for? Some of the feedback I got about the previous parks plan is that it was tricky to understand that you owed for the neighborhood and the community park portion. So developers would come in and say, I owe you $1,960, and like, great, that's so low. The thing was, you owed that to me twice because there was a neighborhood park component and a community park component.
Right.
So I'd often get in the discussion of like, we don't have a neighborhood park, we don't have to pay that portion. So a goal of this for the Parks Master Plan was to take that confusion out and to say,
Lumping
this
it
is the
together.
fee. Yeah.
I think simplicity is very good.
Right, thank you.
I fully support the review more regularly.
I would agree.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
I have another random question.
Yeah.
So the park that's off Jonathan Carver Parkway, that's public utilities kind of now?
So we're using it for storage right now.
Yes.
Yep.
So how does that entrance to Jonathan Carver Parkway, will that, something happen there?
It will likely be improved a bit, but nothing drastic.
Because it couldn't come off 40 otherwise.
No, we'd have to do
No,
a
they'd have
bridge
be
to
a
cross
bridge
the
to get
creek.
Across the creek, yeah.
The site was considered for City Hall, but I know there were some costs that made it really challenging, one of them being getting over the creek with vehicles.
Yeah. And I think where you might be going, that can be tricky if you have a lot of volume
Yes.
going in and out.
Yep.
Tricky is probably not even the right word.
Treacherous.
There we go.
Yeah.
Starts with T.
Because we want the park to be used, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. We've been toying with ideas for the name of this park too, so if you have something that's cute and quirky or significant and fun, please email me because I've been coming up with really terrible ideas. Bark Park, I thought was kind of cute because it's a dog park.
Okay.
But obviously from the Snickers, that's not a great idea. But maybe that could be a fun
Mueller's South.
community thing. Well, I kept calling it the wastewater treatment site, and that was like, let's think of something else.
Sounds like you need to show up in a hazmat suit.
Seriously, right?
And how much of that is in floodplain?
So the area where the Frisbee golf course is primarily, but since it's such minimal improvements to this area, it's not a concern.
Anyone else?
Just as I think about this, potential athletic park movement, and then the cost to adjust that athletic park there, is there any estimated costs on changing that current athletic park, or is that not even under consideration at this point?
Like community park?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So this park would likely need to be fully functional before we started thinking about community park, just because it's used so heavily by different groups in the community. So at least probably 3 of these fields would need to be constructed before we thought about community park differently. And then at full build out, this park includes 6 fields. So someday that might happen, but something that's great about this one specifically is that there's phasing of it. So we could take it in chunks. Like this portion here is 20 plus years in the future, but likely a majority of the infrastructure here would need to be in place before community park were considered to be used differently.
Is the parking adequate?
Okay, I thought we were supposed to be at 30,000 feet, you guys. We're not even supposed to be evaluating this. We're evaluating
Thank you for the
the park
reminder.
dedication fees.
But they're
And,
so
Fun
pretty
task.
and it's so fun.
Well, it is exciting.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, but I'm
You
just
can
saying
rein us
it's
back
not
in.
part of the agenda, so
right.
Rain is
we
in.
kind of stay on task a little bit.
Jim, we can
Not
talk about
picking on
parking
you,
after.
But you could ask her that after the meeting.
I'll be here.
You can take it.
Okay, then I will. Anything further about the park dedication fee structure?
I come up with 3.82.
All right, I'll check my numbers.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with closing the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we just have to note that we had no.
Uh, Could I get a motion to close the public hearing then?
So
Oh.
moved.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. We've closed the public hearing at this point. If we want, we can have further discussion about the park dedication fees and the amended ordinance, or we can vote on it. So what do you want to do? Not trying to stifle anybody, but
I'll make a motion to approve the land use fees and amend the ordinance.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second that.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion. As far as the .82 or whatever, can we have the motion say
Yes.
whatever it really turns out to be?
Yep.
Is that okay?
I'll accept it.
Okay. All right, so motion and a second. Further discussion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, and now at this point, we're down to item number 5, communications. Would anybody like to communicate? Oh, no, you may not. Yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Courtney Johnson. I live at 413 High Street,
Yes,
right here in Carver.
yes.
Is your mic on?
Push the button.
Now it is. Yeah, right. I just wanted to come. I'm trying to make it to all of the commission meetings before the end of the year, which of course I started on November 21st. But I just want to come and say thank you to you all. You guys give a great amount of your time to the Planning Commission, and on behalf of the council, and I'm sure everybody else feels the same way, we really appreciate your guidance and all of the work that you do for the city. So I know that there are some nights where it's nicer to be outside and with your family than in here, but I appreciate the time that you're taking away and giving the city. So just wanted to say thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, anybody else? Mr. Henry? I mean, Councilmember Henry? Okay, cool.
That should be communicated.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that we're gonna light and decorate Gazebo Park and light the Christmas tree on Saturday, November 30th. If you wanna help decorate, we're gonna start probably around noon. There will not be a horse-drawn wagon this year. We will have a fire pit and the makings of s'mores,
Ooh, that sounds
along
fun.
with some coffee, hot chocolate, and maybe hot cider.
Wow, great. All right, if we're done, somebody could make a motion to adjourn.
Cindy, can I say like 2 things?
No.
Two?
I mean, yes, of course you may.
So first, if you all will recall, March opens up interviews for the Planning Commission. So they're, Joanne, you are one, Greg is the other. Vicky, the city clerk, usually starts circulating an email a little bit closer to the first of the year, just asking for interest. And then you'll do an interview with the city council if you're interested in coming back. If not, we thank you for everything. Totally up to you, no pressure. And then the second thing, I know everyone's super busy, but if we could be mindful about RSVPing to these meetings. They feel a little shaky the morning of if we have a public hearing and we're not sure if we have a quorum yet. So let us know if you can come or not. We appreciate it.
All right. Now, were we in the middle of a motion?
Sorry.
That's okay. We weren't?
No one made one. I interrupted you.
That's right, you interrupted me. Okay, could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Krista. Second?
I'll second that.
What is it with you guys, you don't want to adjourn? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? This meeting is adjourned.